we need to do official start here. It's like that, actually. So I actually have questions for you.
Oh, wow. It's like we're actually doing something official and not just talking off the cuff.
This is my first time doing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where in the format that you and I are doing right now, it's my first time doing something like this.
I'm very honored to be your first guest.
I did a Zoom session with a guy named Felipe, who was originally out of Chile, but now he lives in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And really nice guy. He was the only one that showed up for my Zoom session, which is fine. But it gave me the idea of recording my Zoom sessions going forward and putting them on my YouTube channel now, just trying to generate some discussion. I didn't want to repeat what Eric and Scott did, which they did an amazing job with their Backlash. Was it Backlash?
Yes.
Backlash podcast, so. Right? No, who did that? That's Scott Hewlett, isn't it?
I'm not super up on the Raw Deal podcast these days.
He does Heated Shenanigans.
That's right.
Heated Shenanigans with Scott Hewlett, which is a great guy as well. So I got, and then, but yeah, Backlash podcast. You're right. I actually have their promo card over here. So I didn't want to do that where they discussed, because I'm not versed in, especially a lot of virtual stuff. My last involvement in anything Raw Deal related, as far as plate testing, was, I helped and I developed about 85% of Rev 4.
Yes, you did.
And that was through many, many evenings of just shooting the shit with Mike when we both lived in California, taking Post-it notes and writing down and putting it in a sleeve and playing them out. It's like that.
Yep.
And then, and then I got the wild idea of taking the template like that and making them shaped like the cards and cutting them out. Like, come on, man. And then Mike had great ideas of certain cards for that, but they were all broken piles of shit. Which is typical Mike. Mike just wants to go like, this would be cool, man, to do this. And it's like, you realize that it'd be like a two.
That would be really cool once. And then every time after that, nobody wants to play the game.
Let's tone it down. So that was our last involvement, was Rev 4, because I'm a big fan of Rev. I like the format because it's quick. I like that it's less wordy. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I can get 4 games of Rev in the time it takes most to play, 1 game of Classic.
Yeah.
And so that's what would happen is when we had tournaments in SoCal, we would have like whatever format we were having for our tournament, whether it be like, it would always be Classic, but it would, for the most part, except we have like once every few months have a Rev tournament, but we would have like a masquerade, day, which we'd have like, you build your deck and then you get there and then you will randomly select a new superstar. And you use that ability.
That sounds like crazy fun.
Well, here's what the fun part was. I specifically would go through, and Drew would help me out too. I think Justin would help me out sometimes, and Vic, when I used to talk to Vic. Vic and I had a falling out last year. So 20 years of friendship with that guy went down the tubes, but that's a whole different story. We would go through like, hey, what are some basic superstars that wouldn't be, that even part of it? So like, even like, say, Heat Seekers, some of their ability would still apply even no matter what your deck was. So
right, you could still use their basic ability of discarding and moving, and just shuffling cards around.
So like, Victoria was a a great example. Like you could.
Oh yeah, Victoria has a beautifully portable ability.
So you would think that if I'm building a full-on chain decks like that, based on my superstar I originally built, and all of a sudden I get Victoria. Hell yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
So I had 25 different superstars, whether it be, and this was masquerade with anything. It was both Classic and Revolution superstars. So like Sandman would be a great example. You could still use based on your cards,
Right. As long as you have a Revolution deck, Sandman's ability is relevant because you usually impact me.
Yeah, because you're building a Classic deck. You're not building a Revolution deck. You're building a Classic deck, but you get Revolution Sandman as your new superstar ability.
Remind me. Revolution.
Oh, actually, no, it wouldn't be. I'm sorry, it wouldn't be. It'd be Sabu. I'm sorry, Sabu.
Yeah, okay, that's much better.
Sorry, Sabu. My bad.
It's all good.
So, see, I'm not well versed, but
hey, it's been a long time.
We have events like that. So when people got eliminated, we're no longer making the cut and got eliminated. We just start throwing some Revolution games together so you can have all these games going on while guys are. And then I'd hand out random prizes to people. So
that was the best part of playing Raw Deal to me. Is the tournaments were super fun, and climbing up the top seeds was always a blast, especially thinking about the next game. I know who their superstar is. I know what I'm going to do against them, how I'm going to compete. We're going to see how this game plays out. But that time between rounds, when you finish your game and you either are waiting for the round to end so you can go to the next round, or if you've been eliminated, you're still hanging around the tournament because you plan to be here all day and you don't want to just take the ball and go home.
You want to wait
having that time to just be with other people at that tournament and get into crazy shit or just play side games, that was always the best part of a tournament for me.
Because you learn new stuff probably at that point too, right?
I mean, you do, but it's also just time that you spend with people that you don't really get to see a lot, and getting to meet a ton of new people and experiencing metas that are way different than what you're used to, and just having a good time with people that are becoming your friends.
Well, look at, I mean, case in point here is the fact that years later, here I am talking to you now through Zoom. So like that,
yeah.
Somebody else who I've met because of Raw Deal.
Mm-hmm.
I have good friends like Drew. Drew's a very good friend.
Yeah.
He helped me, test this out to make sure it works properly. It's like that, but a lot of people that I met because of the game that were originally customers. Mike is a perfect example. Mike was part of the SoCal group. My partner was part of his SoCal group. There was Mike and Crawford and Ed, and all these guys were all part of this one group. They literally came to my house, thought I was a brick and mortar business, came to my house. And in my residential neighborhood, they're like, oh, we thought that this was like a store, but it's actually your house. So then these guys would come to my house like on a weekly basis to play Raw Deal or help me crack open product. And here's all these years later, and now Mike's my business partner.
Yeah.
All because of Raw Deal. I mean, that's, to me, that was the most fun. It's like that. When I randomly showed up at Gen Con a few years ago, only Drew knew I was coming. I was coming from New Jersey, and I changed my flight to stop connect in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came in on a late Friday night. I met up with I think Mitch was there with Drew. They're playing at the hotel.
Probably.
And I stayed that night with Drew. And the next morning I guess it was the ongoing joke every year for about 4 or 5, 6 years of someone wearing a Tony Vella badge at Gen Con.
Yeah.
But it wasn't me.
Right.
I never went. And so here's the one year I came to claim my damn badge. I had to claim it off of Scott Hewlett. So I showed up and I got like John P.
Yeah.
So, guy talks a big game online, man.
Oh, yeah.
Big game. But when I met him, he couldn't have been more sweet. He was like a very like.
I think it's that New York coming out of him where when he's just talking his stuff up, he gets into it. And
he's very into it.
He's very bombastic. I appreciate that about him.
And you know what? Oftentimes he backs up his shit talk.
He does.
I mean, you don't become a world champion for.
I'm not gonna knock the guy.
I mean, he won the year he won. He won a prize that I really didn't want to get rid of. I had when I was working for RVD, I also got to know the airbrush artist that did all his singlets.
Oh yeah.
So I had sent him a blank canvas, a playmat, and he airbrushed.
I remember this now. I remember seeing that playmat.
And then I had Joe Holland, his name's like that. And there are very, very, very few pieces of product on this planet that have both his and Rob's signature on. So for him to have that, it was pretty cool. I thought it was a pretty cool item to have, Rob and him both sign it. And I'm glad he has. I hope he still treasures it. I mean, to me, I didn't want to get rid of it.
I'm sure that he does. And if he doesn't, get in contact with me. I know you still have me on Facebook. We can work something out. Yeah.
I mean, that to me, I gave away belts at the convention. I gave away belts for Adam Kreitz event. I gave away a pay-per-view chair. That was.
I remember that. Yeah.
SummerSlam that was signed by like 35 wrestlers. The very first couple of Adam Kreitz events, we held them in LA. Mm-hmm. And then the first one I had Rob come by and meet all the players and take pictures and sign autographs. The next year, or 2 years later, I had Lita come over and say hello to everybody when we did a signing at the Frankenstein Collectibles show. And I think the year after that, I had Maurice and Melina come over and say hello to everybody. And so, I mean, we used to do some pretty special things in SoCal, and gave away a lot of stuff, man. I mean, I still got a storage unit full of stuff that I got to get out of California eventually.
Yeah, I always remembered hearing that the SoCal events had stupid good price.
Because
And
I don't know, guys.
It always just seemed like it was a great time with a group of people that really enjoyed each other's company.
We did, and everybody had nicknames for each other. You know, we had a group of guys that were new to the game, and we used to call them we called them the Four Ponies. You know, I'm not going to say their names, but they were the Four Ponies. So yeah, but you know, they would come and they play, and they would absorb, and they would learn, and they would get a little bit better. They had certain decks they liked to play that were their decks. They started to kind of master their decks a little bit better. And I think one of them even made it to the finals one time. These guys were always the bottom four guys. And then, so you knew when they showed up and played, like, at least I'm not finishing bottom four this time. You know, but sometimes they would surprise you. And it was like, oh, wow. I mean, it's like, so, you know, we had nicknames for people. And we have one guy who's like religious on one point like that. So we're like, you know, fuck you, Ed. You know,
I have heard the stories of "fuck you, Ed."
Yeah, and he would take it all in like that. He
at that point, you just have to take it in stride.
No one would say anything to him for a while. So like that goes, I'm just surprised no one's really said it yet. Oh, fuck you, Ed. And you know, but just a great guy, and you know, a great group of guys that would come in and play, and it's like just people that I would probably have never interacted with before, because you know, I always was a seller first, then got into it because I wanted to play. I enjoy playing, but then you know, then after Adam passed away, I inherited his binders of stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm like, wow, you know, what a kind of cool thing to do. Like, it's so close to being, I thought it was. It had still a lot of stuff missing, but I said it was pretty darn thorough. I'm like, I want to finish this. I want to finish everything in this binder, and it took a while, but I eventually got it all done. And then I'm like, it's completed. What else is there to complete? You know, now I don't play anymore now. The group is disbanding. You know, like guys like Ed. Ed is off to being, he's a very successful teacher.
Good.
Guys have just moved. You know, Mikey moved out of California to Wisconsin. You know, a lot of guys just, life interferes.
Yeah.
And he, you know, just things just kind of broke apart like that. And I said, you know what, I'm taking this binder and I'm moving it in inventory now. But before I do, Mike goes, let me scan it all. So let me archive it. All right. And the hell did I know that I was going to be using it for, you know, VelaCards website.
It's good to have these things in case the opportunity arises.
But to be honest with you, I don't own, looking around our dirty office right now. We haven't been here even a year. It'd be a year in August. I don't own any raw deal cards of any kind. I have zero actual, other than the pro printed, you know, backstage autograph session cards.
Right.
And I have all three versions, but the only ones I care about are the version 3.0s.
Those came out really nice.
Creed did them for me. I sent him the image.
Yeah.
I gave him my idea of what I wanted. He made it happen, and I love them. And then he said, I destroyed the file. You have the file.
Yep.
And I go, thanks, man. So I have the file, and of course, Mikey has the file because I gave Mikey everything. Mike has every image of every card that I made available, and then some. So he just archives everything, and so he has it on a drive. Then he has a backup of it on an external drive, and then a backup on his flash drive. So that's
how you got to do it. 3 layers of protection, so that even if 2 things fail, you've still got something to fall back on.
And that's what I like about him.
Yeah.
So we butt heads on certain things, a lot of things. We butt heads on things that how to be done.
But, I mean, Creed and I butt heads on things all the time too, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line in the day is like it's my name on the letterhead. So it's you know, and he reminds me of that. But I also try to be very fair and say, you know, but we're kind of in business together. You know, I made you part of this business for a percentage of sales like that, you know, so I'm not going to pass anything without going through you. It's like that, even though I know in my mind what I want to have done, but maybe I think it's a great idea, but I run it by you and you point out, hey, Tony, that sounds pretty stupid. You know what? You're right.
It always helps to have that sanity check, because an idea can sound great in your head because you're looking at the good parts and the bad parts are just kind of off on the side that you're not really thinking about. somebody else coming in with a fresh perspective won't see all those good parts right away. They'll see the whole picture and they'll be like, what the fuck is all this shit?
Well, that's how
you're like,
and
oh,
you know what?
Shit.
Developing Rev 4 helped me have that kind of bigger picture stuff because, well, an appreciation for it. I was very specific to Creed when Creed said, go for it. Go ahead and because you guys were constantly putting out all the other classic virtual stuff. I'm like, well, we love Rev. If Mikey and I went through and designed some stuff like that, would you be, yeah, totally, go with it. I said, okay. So I would constantly, I told Creed from the beginning, I am not thinking big picture of all access. I don't give a shit about all access. I think it should be a dead format anyways. So all I'm thinking about is how this interacts with other Rev stuff. And we want to take dead Rev cards that no one ever plays and make them somewhat relevant. That's where guys like Santino and Sheamus came into play, where like they would take older cards that no one ever going to play in Rev at all.
Right.
A lot of those hybrids, those antique reversal hybrids, no one ever wanted to play, with the exception of the defense cards. I brutalized that. I will take credit on that. I'm going to pat myself. When Rev 3 came out, I'm the one who made that Ric Flair Rev deck that Drew took to Worlds and won 2 years in a row with. That was my deck that I built because I saw huge value on those defense cards.
I remember in Rev 3, I was doing playtesting with Creed. I did starter testing in Rev 1 and 2. Rev 3 was when we were actually doing set playtesting together. And I remember just making him scream bloody murder about those defense cards. They were so good.
And for an uncommon card, man, they're so good. And it's like, man, I'm packing minimum 2 of those in every deck.
It'd be crazy not to.
And so, abuse the hell of those. So then when Rev 4 came out, the biggest complaint was about people, oh, well, once you hit 7F, and it's like, you just steamroll of the person. Most times, I guess that could be yes. Depending on the superstar, you could still come back. A Ric Flair can still come back. A Taker can still come back. Those guys can still. Elijah Wood, Burke was still great to come back.
I mean, 7 was a money number in Rev all the way back to Rev 1, so that wasn't really Rev 4's fault.
No, not Rev 4, but I'm talking about just as
even Rev 3
Evolution as a whole. 7 was a magic number.
Yep.
So that's why I personally made the defense card, the defense cards. I'm sorry, the desperate moves. I made those.
Yes.
And granted, someone who's kicking your ass, by 30 fortitudes like that, you're somehow still around, and you just can keep throwing it at them, and they can reverse it. It's going to stick eventually, and hopefully get you on the board and maybe bridge you into something they can possibly make a comeback on. Because maybe you've got higher reversals that can help kind of, all right, I got some breathing room now. I can actually start throwing.
Right. It gives you some place to at least start moving.
Correct. So that was, for me, I thought was a big contribution to that, like that. But also we had the idea of trying to toy with making some of those hybrids and some lesser known cards that people didn't want to ever pack. I mean, who wants that stand and switch or whatever the hell it was? Or
you son of a bitch.
Your card, right?
Yes.
I knew it.
For those of you who aren't aware, I had one card that was ever printed in actual printed raw deal, not virtual. And it was a card that I wrote as a lark to be like, hey, why has this never been in the game? And it was a standing switch, because it's a classic wrestling transition. You've got somebody in a lock and they just come around and do the lock to you. So I'm like, this should exist. So I wrote up a treatment, and it ended up going through some revisions and playtesting. The original was not hybrid. It was 4-1 to just bridge you straight into the 5F follow-ups. And
a straight up
Baron, it was a straight up reversal.
Oh, straight reversal.
Yes. So Baron and Mike played that in playtesting, and it did what it had set out to do, but it didn't have enough utility. So it eventually came around to being an 8-0 hybrid antic reversal to give it a little more oomph, rather than it just being a card that you pack to hate on follow-up antics, which was the better design decision. It was a lot of fun seeing that kind of progression. I didn't know. I was not aware that anybody ever gave hate to Standing Switch. I thought it was an innocent little card that nobody really cared about.
But, well, I shouldn't say hate. I should say, why do you think no one packs it? Why was it never playable?
I don't think that it was unplayable per se. It just had a specific purpose that it was setting out to do, and that purpose was never really relevant in the metagame. Because follow-up antics aren't really setting the world on fire.
No.
So having a reversal in your deck that fights follow-up antics is like putting a fire extinguisher in... I was about to say in the Antarctic, but no, fires in the Antarctic are a really big deal.
They're not really a big deal at all.
Putting a fire extinguisher in SeaWorld.
I'm actually looking for the card right now.
It's a 8 Fortitude 0 damage antic from Revolution 3.
Standing switch, yeah.
Yep. There are actually a few of those floating around signed by me.
Really?
Yes.
That's a great fun fact.
I signed probably a dozen of them at Gen Con 2007.
As an antic, discard this card and put up the one assault core, hold core, or throw core from your ringside. See, that's kind of wordy. Wouldn't it just say like, shouldn't it just say, one assault / hold /
They were still a little touchy on the Revolution wording, even in Rev 3. They wanted to make sure that it couldn't be misinterpreted. Because the fear was that if you put assault / throw / hold core, people would see core on the end and assume it only meant the hold part. So I could pick up any assault, any throw, or a core hold.
Okay, gotcha. Got it. Makes sense.
We could have said non-extreme, non-trademark core, but...
Yeah, but by then you're using the same amount of letters anyways, probably by then.
No, we would have said characters. Non-trademark, non-extreme core is about 10 characters shorter than having to call out assault core, throw core, or hold core. Okay. Because you have to say core 3 times in the original. You say core once in the revised version.
Core 3 times.
Yeah. But again, it was still... Revolution never really had a chance to get its legs before the game ended. I think Rev 3 was a great step forward in that, but I think they were also kind of throwing concepts at the wall to see what stuck. And the thing that sticks out to me most in my mind is corners. Corners were a terrible idea.
Yeah, although I did take advantage of that.
Everybody did. Corners were an incredible mechanic if you were never planning to print a set again.
You have a Ric Flair card with like a Triple H in your corner with Sledgehammer, man. Come on.
Yeah. I remember putting Undertaker in my corner in my Vince McMahon All Access deck, just so I could have...
Just so you could have that antic.
Yeah, that's 6/6 antic. And then 3 other cards that I barely care about, but I'm going to pack them because I can.
That's right. Yeah, factions were a great thing. I love the factions. So
yes,
I recently, not too long ago, someone sent me some Revolution 3 stuff, and we had 10 unopened packs, and then I had 25 packs that were opened, and got there's a lot of factions in it. Factions are awesome. I love them.
What I liked the most about factions was that anybody could be in them. If you had a faction that suited your deck design, you could do it. If you were printed on the faction, you got a little extra rider for doing it.
Exactly.
So it was a push toward that, but it was not a hard lock. And you could do a lot of creative stuff with the faction cards.
Pre-virtual stuff, because I don't know if any of my, I could easily look it up. But pre-virtual stuff, that's the only damn pre-match that Andre could pack.
Yes, that's correct. And test too, besides the specifics.
Well, he has his own superstar specifics like that, and he can pack the Stacy Keyboard Manager.
But as far as actually doing things during the pre-match phase, yes, it let Test and Andre actually participate.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask is like that for people who don't know, because you kind of really didn't introduce yourself. Like, who the hell are you? What is your involvement in Raw Deal? Like,
I mean, I'm just some guy who's sitting in front of a bookcase full of games. Hi, my name is Nate Weiss. Do you want to just start at the very beginning, or just hit the highlights?
Well, just kind of like a Cliff Note version of how would people know who you are today?
Okay, so how will people know who I am today is probably because I was the Raw Deal rules manager from 2008 to 2020.
That's a big run.
It's the longest run.
Yes.
I was doing the math when I was at work a couple days ago, and I believe somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but the first rules manager was Ian Taylor, and he ran to, I think, 2004, 4 or 5 before Creed took over. And then Creed was the rules manager until the game ended, until we did Virtual One. And then he was getting more involved in virtual design, and he was like, man, I just can't be in the trenches with rules all day. And I was already a rules moderator on TCO from 2006, I think, or 2005, somewhere around there. So I was practically doing the job anyway, and he's like, you're the rules manager now. I'm like, okay, we can make that work.
Didn't even ask for it, just got handed to you.
I think that's kind of how it goes.
So, but recently you went and handed off your main job to someone else.
Yes, I found my spot and decided it was a good time to move on. So John Rebstock is taking care of the rules for me now. He's a great guy.
Who is it? What's he on? What's his handle on TCO?
Dilbert.
Dilbert, that's right.
With a couple numbers at the end. 719.
Yeah, Dilbert, that's right. That's cool. So, I mean, I still see you kind of poking your head. I recently myself for VelaCards, I had never been on Discord. So about a week or so ago, I finally joined Discord. So I'm sure that probably is going to run well.
Oh, yeah, shoot me your information. I'll be friends with you on Discord.
No, I'm sure on Discord it's going to run well with certain people who don't want to see me there. But
I'm not in the Raw Deal Discord, and I'll tell you why. Because
you're not?
I was the rules manager for 12 years. Which meant if I poked my head in the Raw Deal Discord, my DMs would be blowing up with rules questions.
Ah. True.
So I wanted to make sure that all the rules stuff was concentrated into one place so that not only would it be easy to find the answer before you even ask the question, but once I answer a question, that question is there now. Yeah. It's archived. We know what the answer is. So we're building a database of these answers that we can go back and refer to help people solve their own problems. Yes, on TCO.
Okay. Yeah, I have seen, and you do occasionally poke around on some of the Facebook groups that answer some stuff once in a while. But I think people will copy and paste links to TCO for answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the whole idea, is so that if questions arise, rather than having to answer the same question 25 times, because I've been there, I would rather just have something to point to be like, here's your answer. And here's an archive of every other answer that you would want to find.
So why now? Why step down now? I mean, when it comes to virtual stuff, you've been doing it for 12 solid years.
And I think that's a good run. And I think that that's honestly long enough. So about 6 months ago? No, probably closer to a year ago, Creed passed on the main design to Eric. And I like Eric. He's a great guy.
Very nice guy.
I have always had a pleasure working with him. He's always been easy to work with, and we respect each other. But I also knew that I needed to hang around for a little bit to make sure the transition was smooth. Mm-hmm. But I also needed to get out of there so that I was not the old guy hanging around with the old mentality, keeping these young guys from doing what they want to do.
I call it the old regime versus the new regime.
Yes, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make that transition smooth. I wanted to make sure that they were in good hands, but I also need to get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
And let those guys do things with Raw Deal that Creed and I never even thought about doing.
I think especially some of the guys from years past, I think Creed takes the brunt of the criticism a lot.
He's very vocal. And that's one of the things that I love about Christopher.
Yeah.
He is very vocal. He will tell you exactly what he thinks, and he will tell it to you in a way that really breaks down, this is why I think this way, which is what made him such a great rules manager, that he could just lay out his thought process.
Gotcha.
And when I was rules manager, I tried to have a very clear line of logic in all the things that I was saying, so that you can see exactly where I start, exactly where I'm going, and exactly where I finish. So that if there's a flaw in that argument, if there's something there that isn't sitting quite right, you can say, hey, this doesn't jive with what you said over here. How are these different? And I'm human. I make mistakes.
I was going to ask
Every
you, so
rules manager is
how
going
often
to
is
make
that
mistakes.
logic flawed?
I did my very best. I would say that over the 12 years, there's probably 1 or 2 times a year where something would come up and be like, hey, this doesn't quite jive. Or I'd have to heel turn on past me. Past me hates me by now. He thinks I'm a dick. Because I've just been like, hey, I said this thing 2 years ago. That doesn't make any sense. I was a dumbass. Here's where it actually works.
So that's crazy. So getting out of the game, is it something that a feeling of yours that you just want to be away from the game then? Or so you still kind of linger around, or just how did you know your time just because of the transition, the new regime?
Yes.
So,
I think that just having that new blood come in, I wanted to make sure that they were off on the right foot and then get out of their way.
so the
I
new
still
guys
hang
like
around. I'm still here in the background, keeping an eye on things. Gilbert actually messaged me about 2 hours ago talking about a new design and getting my input on troubleshooting it, making sure that it does what they want to do and it's not going to cause any crazy problems down the road. But my job isn't to be in the trenches anymore. I am not the front line. Gilbert is the front line. John is your guy. If there's anything going on with rules, his word is absolute. I can advise. I can talk things through, keep an eye on things, pitch in my contributions. But I mean, I've never designed superstars that set the world on fire.
But you're part of the development team too, though, for a long time as well.
I was.
Yeah.
But a lot of my work was not in taking the superstar from whole cloth and figuring out exactly how they should run. I've done that with a couple superstars. They're bad.
Case in point?
Vicky Guerrero. Vicky Guerrero was my design all the way through. Yes.
She dug those cards when I actually showed them to her.
Oh, good. I'm glad that she enjoyed them. She probably also doesn't know what they do.
Has no idea what they do.
Yeah.
You know what the number one thing is when I show talent, raw deal, because most of them don't know. You know, Xavier Woods knows like that. I have a cool Xavier Woods story, but Xavier Woods knows. You know, a guy Al Snow knows. Hurricane knows. Steve, so certain guys who know the game. You know, they've heard of the game, but the number one thing that they always say when you show them their superstar face card. Superstar value. I'm only worth a one superstar value.
I mean, if we let the boys set their superstar values, everybody would be at 12.
Of course, everybody would be at 12. Come on, man. I sold more merch than that person. How can that person's a 3 and I'm a 1? I've actually had those conversations before with people.
Superstar values are a snapshot during design. It's not a knock on you.
It's not a
great
knock.
talent.
Yeah. The other thing, like I was saying, I did a Facebook Live the other day about talking about backstage autograph session cards. And the number one complaint I got about those from people was like, you know, why would you only sign this card of Mickey James? I don't understand why I need to sign that. So he goes, it doesn't matter what the image. It's a game. The card text that matters. So then I had with, you know, I have Nash. Nash has been a friend of mine. I've known him for years like that. He's one of my oldest clients. And he just like, whatever you want, T, I'll sign. I don't care. It's like,
yeah.
But, you know, someone else would look at that Scott Hall when I did. It's like that. That's a picture I took of Scott signing an uncut sheet of version 1 of it. And it was like, you know, why don't we sign a picture of Scott? It's not me, it's Scott. You know that, right? I'm like, I'm not a dumbass. Of course I know it's Scott. It doesn't matter.
Wait, that's Scott Hall?
That's Scott Hall? I just saw some random guy. So that's why part of the 3.0 verse like that just becomes like a 1. It's a little bit harder to kind of counterfeit those.
Right.
Because of the logo, I watermarked it in the middle. Not saying it's impossible, it's still more difficult. But also it just doesn't represent any particular person.
Yeah, it's quite literally
because the only person that really gave me the hardest time about signing, but did sign him for me, as I mentioned in the video I did the other day, was Candice Michelle. She was like very, I don't sign things that are not of me.
I can see why she would take that time.
Totally understand that. It's a card game. It's irrelevant. The pictures are irrelevant. It's just a game that people would love to have your signature on. It's like that, and they give away as a prize. And because I'd worked with her before, she agreed to sign the 8 cards that I gave her to sign. Other than that, she's like, and she was flat out said, I won't sign any more of these. I said, okay, thank you very much.
Well, now those 8 cards are severe collector's items.
As I mentioned before, the ones that are even the most, I have a Vince McMahon one sitting here.
I know you do, you bastard.
It's probably one of the worst signatures ever because Vince is notorious for just kind of like going V bloop and a line. That's pretty much it. It's not as bad as Michelle McCool's. It's just an MM for Michelle McCool.
Of course.
And then I have the CM Punk one is very hard. Only 2 exist. And I told the story on that video on how I got those 2 because I originally gave him 5, but he only would sign 2. I think Drew has one, and then I have the other one. And then the Jericho ones, there's only 2 of those, but I had him sign 4 more of the 3.0s. And, you know, he's so nice to me. It's like that. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him, you know, if I needed to. But Kurt's the same way. Kurt will sign whatever I put in front of him. So, you know, I hope to get more in the future, but we'll see. It's a whole different tangent for something else. So
Just don't worry about it.
On the rules, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of pressure to be put on the spot, especially when it comes from the World's Championship standpoint. So you're the rules manager from the very first, even from 08, 09, 2010. We're talking some still heavy competition going on at Gen Con. So
yeah, heavy competition that I was not present for because I did not have the means to get myself to Gen Con those years. So I would just have my phone handy.
When's the last time you've been to Gen Con?
Last time I was at Gen Con was the release of Revolution 3.
So 07?
Yep.
Wow.
That was the one and only time that I went to Gen Con.
And then one and only time I went to Gen Con was, who won that year? I don't think it was Mitch. Maybe it was Mitch. Maybe Mitch won.
What year was it?
17?
Mitch.
16?
I'm pretty sure that was Mitch.
Okay. Yeah, whatever one that I know it wasn't. I didn't prize support for the first time in 10 years. I didn't prize support 2019.
Right.
And I knew there was only going to be like 4 people showing, and that's what it was. I think it was 4 or 5.
Yeah.
At that point, I'm like, you know what? It's always the same 4 or 5 guys. How about I just go ahead and send you guys some prizes? You guys just go ahead and divide amongst yourselves because it's the same guys anyways. Hey,
maybe there'll be a resurgence in 2021.
Maybe
all these new people coming into the game.
You know what? I'll tell you what. From my sales, I did a lot of names I've never seen before. A lot of first-time buyers, and there's a couple of old school guys that are not familiar to me. But then I look and I kind of see them like, oh, that guy was. I saw him on Facebook groups like that, and he used to play back in Insurrection or something like that. You know.
Yeah, I've seen some of the older faces starting to poke their heads back.
So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I've seen a resurgence in the UK market too. Although I'm also seeing guys out there selling virtual stuff on eBay right now.
I mean, every virtual card has a line on the bottom that says not for resale.
I know. And that's a whole different conversation I like to have either with you or Creed or both of you, something like that. I know that I walk a very fine line with that.
Yeah.
But I'm very explicit in my description on.
Right. You are not selling the card. You can get the card image from TCO for free.
I'll be happy.
All you are selling is
I'm selling service.
Yes. You are selling the service of having them professionally printed on card stock and then shipped out.
Mind you, we also make it, our cards are slightly, ever so slightly, they're not exactly the same exact size as a raw deal card.
Okay.
I have a difference. That's where my partner and I are battling about right now. Because he's been doing that. You know, I make every image ready. I don't use a program. I know other guys were using programs and they can just run through a whole set and boom, 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 and apply a black border to it. I have gone through and I've taken every single virtual card image and I've manually edited them, every single one of them. Because especially the older stuff from V1, V2, V3, they're not all the same color border.
Yep.
So I have to kind of manipulate them so that it kind of bleeds a little bit more. It's like that. And it took a long time to do that. So plus, unlike the other guys who go and have all their pro printed stuff like that, I get the raw, highest resolution possible of the card. These guys get the downloaded docs, downloaded PDF files, and they make their cards from that. So mine are not that.
There's definitely a huge
slightly better
quality.
Yeah. So there's that, but I know I walk a very fine line. Again, I don't want to go on that tangent like that. It's a crazy
Sure.
thing.
That is definitely a conversation we can have with Creed present.
So with I bring up worlds like that is so you probably had to give some rulings on some pretty crazy shit. Like what's the craziest ruling that not only that because it was crazy in the sense that was like, you know what? I really have to think about that one.
So that's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately, because when stuff came up at Worlds, generally speaking, it was stuff I could just answer off the cuff. And that's not anything to say about the difficulty of the question. And man, I would kill to have those questions archived right now, but that was 3 phones ago. So that's not stuff that I even have because it was just text messages. But the stuff that would come up was always just kind of like, this is something that I say a lot. You can solve 80% of rules questions by just looking at the timing breakdown.
The timing breakdown.
Yeah, and it holds up. The timing breakdown is very clear and very specific about what happens when and when things are checked. So, like, when you're checking the fortitude on a card, that's only checked during step 2. And after you've done stuff that's like, when you play this, you can do this thing to reduce this card's fortitude. And the only play effects that go off before the fortitude check are things that you do to modify the fortitude check. Then you check the fortitude of the card. If you can play the card after that, fine. Everything else starts going off. If you can't, then the card was never attempted, and everything you did to reduce its fortitude never happened, so don't do it.
Interesting.
And especially when it comes down to stuff that happens when a card is successful. So, successful card goes into the ring at step 6. Step 7A is all the stuff that triggers when you successfully play a card of that particular persuasion. You being the person who played the card. That's something that trips up people a lot about Raw Deal in terms of the timing breakdown. The timing breakdown does not give a shit whose turn it is. That does not matter in any way, shape, or form. All it cares about is who controls this card that I'm looking at the timing breakdown of.
Gotcha.
So 7A, all the controller's effects go off. They can go off in any order that that person wants. You can manipulate that stuff. Hold on just a second. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We're shooting live, folks.
I'm so used to it, man. With the 1-year-old running around just like that, he can be quiet. I go, you know what? Now's a good time for me to make that phone call. And goes like, so I get on the phone. He's like, la, 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 la. He just wants to be involved in everything. Sorry, Dad's talking to someone. So
But yeah, 80% of questions just get solved by the timing breakdown.
The timing breakdown is pretty much like you said, is sort of bulletproof, that it speaks for itself and it fits within. But obviously, you've probably made some ruling decisions that people probably don't agree with, especially in a very high pressure like world championships. Like there's a lot on the line there. So I'm sure people have disagreed with you on rulings.
Oh, people have disagreed with me on rulings all the time.
But in a high pressure, so I mean, some people get really pissed off because like that's not how that card's supposed to be played. I played it a million times this way, so I don't give it. In worlds, it's got to be pretty high pressure right there. Like it's got to be. Has there been a ruling that you've done that like really like it altered the game?
I can't remember one, so probably not, because another thing to remember about Worlds is that the people who go to Worlds are the people who have invested a ton of time and effort and thought into making these decks and learning the metagame and how the game runs.
Mm-hmm.
So when they sit down to play, they generally have a good idea of what's going to happen. And if there are any rulings that come up, it's usually very minor stuff because they've already worked out the major stuff ahead of time. I have had times where people have dinged my inbox with questions before Worlds to make sure that their deck actually functions. But I wish I had a great splashy answer that I could spend 20 minutes describing a story of. But the truth of the matter is that by the time people get to that point, all the big stuff's already handled.
Gotcha.
So I've gotten into discussions with people about the rules. And usually it's like the same 2 people who have an idea in their head and they really want the rules to work that way, and they don't. But the one that springs to mind is what I was just talking about earlier with the timing breakdown, where somebody thought that, no, The timing breakdown really cares about whose turn it is. So the person whose turn it is resolves all their stuff first. And no, nothing in the timing breakdown has any language to that regard.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone would, having that knowledge, knowing that the timing breakdown has no care in the world about whose turn it is like that, solves a lot of some of these arguments, I think.
It really does, because it just makes you think about, all right, is this my card? It's my card, so my stuff goes off first.
Correct.
Then my opponent's stuff goes off. And then we move on with our lives. It's one of the nice things about Raw Deal, is that a lot of the stuff just happens and then you move on. There aren't a ton of cards that just have an effect that lingers. In fact, no card has an effect that can linger beyond the card. That's a rule. It's called the bookkeeping rule.
Gotcha.
The only time that effect can linger beyond the card is when the card removed itself to make an effect. And then that effect lingers as long as it needs to, and then it goes away. And because of that rule existing, we tend not to design cards that are like, put this card to your ringside and then get this effect for the rest of the game, because we don't want to have to track that. When you want to track that, you leave things in the ring so that you can interact with them, or put them someplace where you can see the card and it's not going to get buried in a pile, which is usually the backstage.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you don't have to keep in mind, all right, I popped the titles on the line 4 turns ago, so I have +3 damage to all my submissions, but my opponent activated defensive posture, so my grapples have -7 damage, so super kick. That would be an interesting game. I don't know if I would want to play it.
Okay, hold on, let me do the math.
Right.
That's part of the thing I didn't like about playing Classic, because it became so wordy and there was so much that you have to remember to do. And because your matchups with certain people, it's like, I understand my deck. I built my deck. I know what all my shit does, which is great. Not a lot of times. I played a lot of people. We have some guys in the SoCal area that used to play like, I'm basically playing 2 decks. I'm playing mine and yours because you don't have any idea what your deck does.
Yeah, I've been through that.
So
I remember a round of Worlds, the qualifier at Gen Con. I was playing against somebody playing Big Freaking Machine, I think. And it was immediately apparent at the start of the match that he had no idea what anything did, because I would play a card and he would spend three minutes reading it.
We had
Eventually, that was the only game I had that entire day where I got anywhere close to the time limit. And the rule for time limit is that once 3 minutes is called, any games that are still going, a judge comes and sits to watch the game, because after that 3-minute call, you are not allowed to concede. You are not allowed to do anything except let the match play out to its natural conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And if time runs out on you, it's a double loss.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is to discourage decks from intentionally running to time. It encourages both players to play in a timely manner, and also to build your deck so that you're actually trying to win the game, not just stall forever.
God, I hate stall decks.
Yeah. Stall decks, it's kind of like playing Control in Magic, and I know that means nothing to you. But the common thing between both of them is that they really want you to not play the game. They really want you to just sit back and either do nothing, or you can play cards all you want. They're just not going to do anything. And it's a mindset that you kind of have to go into, like, okay, I know these decks exist, so a couple matches, I'm going to just be doing stuff and it's not going to be effective. A great deck builder will build things into their deck to negate that eventuality or find a way around it. But if you're not expecting it, it can be very, very frustrating to just walk into a wall and just keep pounding your head against it over and never feel like you're making any progress.
Oh, talk about an MPE.
Yeah. Although, because the time limit rules are like that, that kind of NPE never really developed to a point where it would really hurt the game. The bigger NPEs that we always had in our minds were the games where you don't get a chance to interact with your opponent because he just wins.
Yeah.
I remember one that we kicked in the face repeatedly at the start of Virtual was a deck that was built around just taking a single endless turn of moving cards around and just through arcane magic and technical actions. All right, you have no hand, you can't do anything, and now I'm just going to beat you to death by stripping out your entire arsenal and then throwing big move after big move so you can't respond to it.
That sounds like fun.
Oh yeah, it sounds like great fun if you're playing the deck.
Wow.
That was why I ended up losing out in top 4. Was it top 4? It was either, I think it was top 4 in that qualifier because I ran into one of those decks and I was not super prepared for it. I had a general idea of what was going on, and my deck was well suited to have a fighting chance. But I think I could have played better, for one. And 2, if I had known that deck was coming, I could have slid a couple cards into my deck to force them to give me turns back. And it's funny. The card that immediately sprang to mind was a card that nobody plays, and nobody in their right mind should play because it's terrible. But in this particular specific instance, it would have made a difference. The card I'm talking about is Pass the Buck. So Pass the Buck is an active 0 fortitude action that lets you draw a card. That is probably the extent of its utility. But you can also put it in your opponent's ring when he plays a card that lets him move cards from his ringside to his arsenal, and he can't move cards from his ringside to his arsenal for the rest of the turn. So part of what made that deck function was that they were playing Technical Dropkick as an action over and over to just keep cycling them all back to the bottom of their deck. If you stick a Pass the Buck in their ring in response to that, the Technical Dropkick just drops into ringside and then doesn't move. And then they can't move Technical Dropkicks. So their alternative is, okay, I pass the turn. Because they can't do anything.
Awesome use for Pass the Buck. Holy shit.
Yes, it totally stomps a mud hole in an archetype from 13 years ago that nobody plays anymore because we nerfed the hell out of it.
That's funny because I actually featured that card as, I think a couple of years ago, like, what do you think about this? Like, one of my tweets or something like that, which when I say tweet, I have to say, damn you, D2. What do you think about this card? Or would you ever play this card, pack this card? Like, everybody just said, fuck no, no way, no way.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that has such a super narrow niche that 99% of the time it's useless. Why would I pack this? Why would I not just reverse the thing that's making the movement in the first place? Or, I don't know, kill them harder?
Kill them harder? Like in the pre-match phase, make it real fun?
Oh, man.
So outside of your being a rules manager, so now going to being a player.
Sure.
You officially started playing Raw Deal at what release? From the beginning?
Okay. No. So I started playing Raw Deal in the summer of 2003. So that would have put me right around Survivor Series 2, if memory holds up. And me and a buddy from high school were like, hey, this game's kind of cool. Let's start playing against each other. And we made ourselves a deal where when we went to buy product, we'd both buy the same amount of product. So one of us couldn't be like, hey, I bought 4 boxes. You want to play some games now? And just completely demolish the other person. So he bought the game starter. And I bought a Hulk Hogan starter because I thought, hey, they got to make Hulk Hogan good, right? I don't know if anybody knows, but the Hulk Hogan starter is atrocious.
It's bad.
Yeah, there's 10 reversals in the whole damn thing. The game starter is much better. So, of course, I got demolished it was bad. And I would say even through, like, Divas Overload, I was still just getting trashed. I was learning, but it took me a long time to really work my way up the ladder and start to understand the nuances of Raw Deal and get myself to a point where I could play it well.
It's like a year process right there because you started and you said in 03. If SS2 would be summer of 03. Overload came out a year later in 04. So, I mean, yeah. And things keep changing every time. As a matter of fact, I just updated interesting note about changes in releases like that. I was made a note and everyone go in the product section of VelaCards. And at the beginning, it lets you know at the top tier in the product section, when you click on Premiere, it tells you what starter decks were.
Yep.
They were. And then fully loaded would tell you what starter decks and then what booster packs superstars there were. Yep. And you got down to like certain release like Insurrection or whatever it was, or Divas Overload says this release introduced this, like, whether it be volley cards or chain cards or heat cards. Like, So people had an understanding of when things kind of. I was like, wow, I never realized I didn't have that in the VelaCard stuff. So now it's there. But just to see how the game kind of changed, and like I think the Vengeance maybe that really had a lot of changes in it, like a lot of mechanics that changed in Vengeance.
So Vengeance introduced Chain and Heat.
Yeah. Well, more than
Vengeance
that, it also introduced other
venue
aspects
phase.
too.
Yes. Vengeance introduced the venue phase. So that was also when the pre-match and mid-match went to Pac-10 Play 5.
So I did, yep. This release also increased the Backlash deck by 20 cards and upped the number of pre-match and mid-match cards in play by 5 each. This release also introduced Backstage Area, Venues, Universally Active, Chain, and Heat cards. That's a lot of shit.
Well, introduced Backstage is slightly misleading because there's nothing in Vengeance boosters that actually cares about Backstage, or even, I don't even know if they even say the word Backstage in there. But concurrent with Vengeance was the release of the Backstage Signature, which was the first Backstage card. And like that's also, when the
wasn't there
Backstage...
one for, wasn't there already one for Lawler at that point, though?
King's Crown was in the Battle Bag, which came after Vengeance.
Yes, that's right, yes. Way better, way later. So yeah. Well, no, we came for next release. It was a next holiday release.
Correct.
That's what I was like. Because I was going through and talking, because my goal with this program that I'm doing here, also for the YouTube channel, is I really want to go and I can get someone like you and it has a lot of knowledge and kind of talk about just one release and do 15 minutes or 20 minutes talk about just one release. Talking about it with Crease like that, I could probably pretty much just I'm talking about with Drew, pretty much take a Premiere and fully load it and put it in one thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But just kind of break things down as far as like what about this release? What did it introduce? Was there any hidden things that were supposed to be developed that never got put out? Blah blah blah. Hey, let's talk about Muhammad Hassan's like that and why he changed it. Let's talk about the Basham brothers and things like that, and kind of give people an understanding. Like, yeah, that was something we didn't do. That that Kerwin deck never got made. We ended up making that really for this and kind of thing. And
Kerwin White was one of those things where we dodged a massive bullet, because I think if Kerwin White had ever actually been printed, oh man, people would look at those cards now and think, what the fuck were those guys doing?
Well, for
those of you who aren't aware, Kerwin White was a gimmick that Chavo Guerrero was using, and he stopped using it when Eddie died, because part of the gimmick was that he was giving up his Latin heritage.
Yeah, he renounced his heritage, yeah.
Right. And then Eddie died, and Chavo's like, I'm not doing this shit anymore.
Yeah.
I want to support my uncle.
Yeah.
So all the Kerwin White cards just became Chavo cards. Okay. Which is why Chavo has that one awkward ultra rare reversal. It's My Life for You or something like that. It's or 1 for 1.
1 for 1.
1 fortitude, 1 damage. And that title means nothing. Why would you call it 1 for 1? Because when it was designed as a Kerwin White card, it was, here's one for the White fans in the audience or something. And which is why it's 1 fortitude, 1 damage. So all they did is change the names. They didn't change any of the mechanics or anything, because the set was ready to print. They didn't really have time.
Gotcha. See, that's fun fact stuff right there, man. So, as a player too, so how many world events did you play in?
How many world events?
Like world championships. Like how many times?
So I played in 1 world championship, and that was in 2006. Yeah, that was 2006. Because that was WrestleMania 22. And you could back me up on that. That was 2006, right? Or was that 2007?
Well, WrestleMania 21 was in LA. That was 05, so yes.
Yeah, 2006 in Chicago. Yep. It was a great time. I played in World Qualifiers at Origins in 2005 and 6. I won neither of them. And I played in the qualifier at Gen Con in 2007.
Okay.
But the only time I actually got to Worlds was 2006. And I got to that by virtue of being the #1 ranked player in the world, which I was from, what would have been, August 2005 to July 2006. So just about a year.
So you played during a very heavy heyday of world championships like that. It's like, what was it like playing in a world championship event when you have numbers that many people playing?
Yeah.
From all over the world by then, by the way.
Oh, yes. Yes. The World Championship that year was, I believe, 16 participants, because that was the year that they brought in the manager qualifier, and there was the last chance qualifier that went on that same, or it was the day before. The last chance qualifier had like 120 participants that year.
Holy crap.
Yeah. We were in this really cool comic shop that I can't remember the name of, but it is in a suburb of Chicago. And this place, you walk in, and then it's like, it had to be 100 feet back. And 3/4 of that was play area. And it was just packed to the gills. There were some seats reserved off to the left for people who had already qualified. And I was just sitting there watching, and there were just a ton of people. One of my friends was playing in the last chance qualifier, and he didn't even make it to the cut, but he had a really good time. And it was just really cool to be in that environment. And playing in the World Championships was a ton of fun. I met people that I would have had no business meeting otherwise. I wish I could remember the gentleman's name. It was one of the guy who won the UK qualifier. I'm sure we can find that information, but I don't have it at my fingertips. But I won a game against him, and the only reason that I won was through guile and trickery. So he was playing Teddy Long. I was playing A-Train. And
A-Train.
Yeah, A-Train. Because A-Train has some of the best pre-match in the game. Snot Rocket just wrecks
awesome.
people.
That's awesome.
So he was being typical Teddy Long and just controlling the game. We're about halfway through. I have nothing on the board. He's at like 15 fortitude. So I'm just sitting there and I'm like, all right, if I play this game regularly, I'm not going to win. And he had asked me like 3 turns ago, does A-Train have any 0 for 8s? Now, there's something important to keep in mind as far as the rules go. You, as a player, can ask a judge for the complete text of any single card in the game, and the judge has to give it to you. And he has to give it to you completely without any errors. I mean, at this point, we would probably just pull up VelaCards and look at the damn thing. But if you ask a judge a qualitative question, like, are there any 0 for 8s that A-Train can pack? The judge cannot give you that information, because that is beyond the scope of what does this card say or how does this card work. So knowing that, when he asked me that question, I just shrugged and said, I can't tell you that. So getting about halfway through the game, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my hand, and I'm like, all right, I have to do something. There's no way I'm going to win this game just through straight, brutal beatdown. So I throw Sidewalk Slam Throwback as a maneuver. Sidewalk Slam Throwback is a 0 for 3 that reverses unreversible cards and foreign objects. It is a bad maneuver to throw.
Yes.
But I threw it.
That's what they call a desperate maneuver.
No, it's not a desperate maneuver. You designed those. And he goes elbow to the face, of course, because he's Teddy Long. He has reversals all day. I take my 2 damage. And then I just sit back. And I let him think about why I would throw Sidewalk Slam as a maneuver. I'm obviously desperate. I have nothing else. So he feels safe. He's got an elbow in his hand. He's fine. So he does something else that I reverse, and it gets back to my turn. So I go, okay, if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to do it now. Discard for my ability, grab Technical Slam, throw Technical Slam. It's an 8 damage grapple. He looks at the elbow to the face in his hand and says, I feel so betrayed right now. I go fetch a Technical Tope, which is an 8 for 12 high risk. The slam walks, goes all the way through his arsenal without getting reversed. 12 damage high risk on top of that. He's got nothing. Went from me having no fortitude, no chance, to me having 20 fortitude, and now he has to play into me instead of me playing into him. That game turned around on a dime, and I won. I shook his hand like 5 times because I was so fucking nervous. I ended up missing the top cut by a game in that World Championship because I went 3-1 in All Access and 2-2 in Afterburn. And you had to go 3-1 in both to make the cut. I was never a super big fan of Afterburn to begin with, because I feel like we talked about this in one of the Facebook chats.
We did.
I'll recapitulate it for the people who weren't there. So Afterburn as a format was Raw Deal's attempt at making a standard. So it was everything from the Battle Bag onward. And you could notice that because from the Battle Bag onward, they changed the little blurb where it had the version information to be in this big pronounced bubble.
Yep.
So everything with that bubble was legal. But cards were legal by card name. And they did that very specifically because Afterburn came around with Survivor Series 3. And they did not want to be seen as, hey, you want to play in this new format? Buy out the new product. They wanted it to be more open and letting people come in and play with it and feel out what changed. But because it was that open, because SS3 had a ton of reprints and a ton of throwbacks, because they reprinted every superstar that they could get their hands on, that WWE would allow them to reprint, that the Afterburn card pool was practically the all-access card pool, but it was missing a few key things that you would just trip over. So when it came to sitting down and building an Afterburn deck, it was not, wow, this is such a different, cool environment. This is the same environment, but this thing that I really want that will make this deck work, it doesn't work in Afterburn. It was really disappointing. And then as the game went on, especially when Revolution killed Afterburn deck, because at that point, Revolution was so different that it's like, well, we don't really need to support this Afterburn format. We can have all access in Revolution.
Yep.
And that kind of got them to where they wanted to be.
And
you and I have talked about at length about how all access was a bad idea.
We can have a whole different conversation about all access.
Yeah, that'll be a whole separate day because I don't want to be here until 9 o'clock.
I have a whole book and Post-it notes when I started this idea of having these little sessions like this, of like breaking things down and this. And I definitely want to talk just about the Afterburn formats like that. And again, these are going to be, this is a very long session you and I are having, much longer than I expect it to be. But
I mean, I warned you at the start that I can talk for hours.
I know, and same here. But I definitely want to be able to talk about the releases, talk about the different, what the dynamics of what things changed in the history of Raw Deal, as far as like, what did Chain and Heat do, and what did Volley do, and Bash, and all that crap. So everything's gonna have its own topic. I don't want to inundate someone with a bunch of information that it's like, oh my God, I'm going to watch that one video about.
It's going to make it a lot more approachable for people coming in to be like, hey, how does Volley work? Let's watch this 20-minute video on Volley and talk about how it changed the game and how it was designed and things like that. It's a great idea.
So knowing all that stuff though, so that's pretty cool. That's a cool story. Like that's a cool match, by the way. It's like going back and forth like that.
That was what was a lot of fun for me about playing Raw Deal, is that Raw Deal has a ton of psychology in it.
Which just like wrestling does.
Oh, yeah. But it's even deeper than that, because Raw Deal has a ton of play-counterplay and feinting your opponent into making a bad move so you can capitalize on that. That is the essence of Raw Deal. That's what makes Raw Deal feel like a chess match. And that was super, super fun to me. That's what made me want to play this game more.
Do you ever play at all anymore?
I haven't picked up Raw Deal in a long time. And it's not that I don't like the formats or I don't like what we've done, because I love virtual. I love working on virtual. But I don't have a play group around here anymore that plays. That's
the number one thing I think most people talk about. It's like they would want to play. There's not a play group, or they have like that one guy that will play, but they want more, kind of thing. I know that the virtual formatting, as far as like even playing on, what's the OC?
Octagon?
Yeah, whatever the hell it is.
I've never even looked at Octagon.
And Lackey being another format. Yeah. And then there's some guys in Chile that have developed a format out there for some kind of a tabletop version of it.
Which probably a tabletop simulator. Yeah.
So I got asked in the last one too what my thoughts were about Xavier Woods' comments a couple of years ago about bringing an app, a mobile version like that. And I said it has no legs. It just really doesn't, because you can get a guy like that who probably has some influence, obviously with his up, down, down, but there's a lot of hurdles to get over, because that's what, Creed would get annoyed every single year. Someone would bring up like, man, if I win the fucking lottery, I go out and just bring Raw Deal back. Do you understand?
Hey, we knew somebody who won the fucking lottery.
I know.
And he looked at it and said, yeah, that ain't going to happen.
That ain't going to happen.
He bought a Ferrari instead.
But it's just, people don't understand the hurdles that are, I guess someone like a Steve Rusk would have a better appreciation, because he understands, developing his own game and then going through and trying to figure out the licensing. I mean, it's a lot of
by that same token, why would Steve Rusk even bother with Raw Deal when he already has Super Show, which is doing well for him?
No, but he went through those hurdles with Super Show.
Oh, yeah,
because he was going to make his engine, and his game was originally going to be, because I have a New Age Outlaws card that he brought to one of our.
Yeah, I've got decks of that have like WWE guys. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, well, there's an Orton one, which was,
Mhm.
originally was, those characters, those first releases were based on WWE characters, a Cena deck, which was,
Yep.
Mass Llama. I mean, yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. But, it was a fun, playing games like that. But, he learned very quickly about, God, the licensing rights just from WWE alone.
Yeah.
Like, that already in itself is a setback. Then you have all the hurdles of like, oh, if I want to bring Rod Dill back, well, I can't talk to Bear anymore or his estate, so I really have to talk to Mike and then have, get his permission to use that engine. And then
Yep.
And then Topps has a license now for all the gaming like that. So even though they don't really make a whole lot of stuff with the slam attacks, I mean,
there's a lot of barriers in place that you have to
Exactly.
figure out a way to overcome.
and then on top
They're
of all
not
of that,
insurmountable, but it's a lot of work, a lot of effort. You would need a whole company working on it.
yeah, it's not even a money issue in a sense. Well, it is a money.
It
it's all about
is,
money.
but the money issue
the
is
hurdle.
secondary to the time issue.
Correct. And it's like, say, okay, I got the license. Mike said it's okay. Top doesn't care if I make a raw deal product. Now I'm going to make a mobile version of it. I got to pay developers now to actually make a development. Oh, I forgot about that. It's just.
And we haven't even talked about marketing the damn.
No, not even talking about marketing yet. They forget about that stuff. It's a lot. Trust me. As a seller of raw deal, nothing would be greater for me than having more raw deal being put in packs again and go out to a distributor and start buying cases again.
I've had dreams where I've cracked open fresh raw deal packs.
Well, I mentioned this in one of the Facebook Live events. Now, years ago, when I was in California at Frank & Sons, there was these Orozco brothers. They were a wholesale specialist there at Frank & Sons. They were one aisle and up to the front door closer to me. I went over and became friends with them, and I said, wow, you have a lot of raw deal stuff. I just got into the raw deal product. I said, can I buy some off of you? Oh, yeah. I was like, well, how'd you get so much stuff? I mean, Comic Images sold them everything from Vengeance backwards.
Yep.
All their remaining inventory,
Mm-hmm.
everything. They bought all of it. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll buy 2 cases of everything, 2 cases of Premiere, 2 cases of back, 2 cases of everything they had. And I had it at my booth. And all the guys that became my friends, they come by and I had great prices on it. I'm $35 a box, which was way below wholesale.
Yeah.
Buy 2 for $50, buy 2 for $60, buy 3 for $75.
That's a great deal.
Because I was paying $14 and change a piece.
Yeah.
So I was still making money.
Yeah. Everybody's happy at that point.
So everybody was happy. So guys were buying all kinds of stuff and then cracking stuff open. They got a hot pack. Hey, can I sell you? Hey, I'll buy them off you for this. And I did it, put my display case,
Yeah.
But and they said, yeah, we're going to go back again. Like the following year, they're like, yeah, we're going back to buy everything else out. So like that, it's going to be everything from Armageddon forwards like that. So like SS3, No Way Out. I said, I'll take everything that I'll take 3 cases of everything at this point because it sold so well from the first time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The same price point they gave me too.
Oh Jesus!
So I asked for it.
Yeah.
Weeks would go by. Hey, what's going on? So I got, oh, we're so sorry. We forgot to tell you. It literally went from our truck to these other distributors' trucks. Walmart's and Targets bought them out.
No.
So if there's some place in the country you can go to, like for a long time, I'd be in Texas with Kevin Nash like that. We go hit up a Walmart for something. I just happen to check the card aisle. Hey, there's like a little collector's box of wrestling. It has like an old Fleer pack in it. It has a Divas Overload pack in it. It has a pack in it. It has all this stuff. I said, I'm going to buy it, And it's like, $20 for like, 10 packs.
Yeah.
And so I buy it, but I never have seen anywhere where they had SS3 boosters in it or No Way Out or Unforgiven or Bash. So I'm telling you right now, like I said in this Facebook Live, there's somewhere in this country in a distribution center, there are pallets of product that's just sitting there and getting dust all these years because they don't know what to do with it. And I know that you could say, why would someone have pallets of merchandising in a warehouse somewhere that doesn't even get moved? That's like a waste of space. You're absolutely right. But Frank & Son Collectibles Show, where I was at until February this year, was in a 60,000 square foot warehouse that was a shipping and receiving docking station. Had all the places where people would back their trucks up to these docking windows for trucks. And that's what it was. So it took up about 75% of that warehouse was dealers. But then the back corner was all off in the public, was just pallets of stuff that Frank, who owns the place, that's the name Frank & Son.
Frank & Son,
had a pallet of like all these big screen Vizio TVs that someone just abandoned there.
Yeah.
From years ago. And he'd sell them for $200. Like, that's a great deal for a 60-inch TV, man.
But at that point, it's not so much getting the money for the TV; it's getting the space back.
Exactly. But it'd be refilled with something else because he still had another shipping area that used to be where Frank and Sons used to be located before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are all gone now, of course, but my point is that someone out there, whether it be a Target distribution center or a Walmart distribution center or some wholesale special sitting around that doesn't know what to do with it, it's got so much crap. Because there's guys like Hills Wholesale. He's got so much stuff. I mean, there was a time when I was doing that Steel City Con in Pittsburgh every year. He had a booth. I mean, he had a huge row of all just his stuff. And he'd have used video games and a whole bunch of raw deal stuff. And he knew I was doing raw deal. He wanted to sell me everything. So buy me out, buy me out. At that time, he still had a few cases of Great American Bash at times, like that. He had some stuff. And he's like, man, but you're $125 a box on the Great American Bash, like that, which is a deal now.
Yeah.
And so he's like, for $9,000, you can buy everything off me. It's like that. I'm like, it's like, I want to come up with $9,000 right now. And for the inventory he had, I would have quadrupled out of that, no problem.
But it's still getting the money in the first place.
Yeah, but there's a lot of guys out there that have a lot of inventory. There's guys like me and Scott from Category and Steve from Cart Launching. We have inventory. Some of us more than others, and we have boxes and boosters and this and that. There's somebody out there with cases, literally cases.
And they have no idea what they're sitting on and no idea where to move it. That's
why guys are always looking for the Holy Grail. Like, hey, I heard such and such from such and such company's got like a palette of like mixed stuff of like, 86 Fleer, basketball. I'd love to get a handle on that. Jordan's in there for crying out loud.
Yeah, for fucking real.
So people just don't know. And somewhere down the road, someone's like recently, a guy from posted all these boxes and stuff. He had a Rumble, a Seal Rumble box, which he's trying to sell it as a booster pack, by the way. He's has it on eBay right now for, I think it's $1,100 or $1,200. It's all Rumble packs. It's not boosters. It's Rumble. Even boosters being probably the holy grail right now for product isn't worth that much. Yeah. I mean, even if I haven't marked that for me, that's a whole different topic for me and my pricing. But for me, I have them at $20 a pack for SS3 if I ever had SS3 packs. Yeah. You would put that for $30, that's $720 for a box. Woo. But that's if you always make your money off the a la carte. You make your money off of the packs. So if I sell a box for 100, my packs are going to net me probably more, at least 150 to 160 bucks. Oh yeah, of course. If I sell them by pack. It's a longer run to sell those packs. Mm-hmm. So there's somebody out there sitting on product that I would love to one day.
We've been talking about SS3, and I just want to chime in real quick that I was at Origins that had to be 2006 when SS3 was released? Or was that 2006?
It's 2006.
2006, yeah. So I'm at Origins. This is the release of SS3. And I'm, a poor college student at this point. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll buy a dozen packs. What the hell? So I sit down at the Comic Images booth with my dozen packs of SS3, and I crack one open. And when you know who won the pony, the very first SS3 pack I open is a hot pack. Nice. So this is the set premiering at this con. No one's gotten their hands on this yet. And I'm like, anyone an SS3 paid laden made?
They're probably freaking out.
Oh, yeah. People were super excited. It was a good time.
We kind of, not the same level, but when we cracked open Rev 3, when we had a tournament at Frankenstein, we did a draft. And someone got a hot pack out of SS3. And I made a trade with I can't remember his name, but he got a My Way. Yeah. And that's a great card just like that. And
Rumi did a good job of that card.
Yeah,
it's a good card.
My Way's a great card. And then so I think I traded a couple of Shawn Michaels ultra rares for it. Yeah. But it was good stuff. Yeah, it's a good one.
It was always a weird feeling when you opened a hot pack during sealed, because like, man, this is really great, except I have nothing to put in my deck. Yeah. Except we always, back at the shop where I played, we like to play Australian rules drafts, which is that you can pack whatever you want regardless of Superstar logo. So if you open a hot pack, that's 15 ultra rares you could put in your deck. Nice. With the exception that you still have to obey packing rules, so no face heal, no raw smackdown. Sure. But that just made some of the most fun drafts. Like a time where I drafted a Trish Stratus starter with 6 packs, because we were playing Raw Draft where you bid with packs. And I came in at the end and I was like, yeah, I'll take Trish in this pile of 4 packs for a pack. And I'm like, okay, I've got this starter deck now. What in God's name am I going to do? Because I really need to pull a superstar. I'm going to play Trish Stratus. I'm going to be screwed.
Yeah.
So I might have pulled a hot pack that day, but I did end up pulling a superstar card in my last pack. It was Rene Dupree.
Oh.
And I made that deck work. I managed to build a legal Rene Dupree deck out of a Trish Stratus starter and 6 packs.
Wow.
For those of you who don't know, Rene Dupree's ability is you can only pack 1 copy of any card.
Yeah.
So I had 60 unique cards plus another 10 card backlash deck. It was also great fun playing Rene Dupree and playing I've Been a Very Naughty Girl.
That's awesome.
It was a fun day.
That answered my question. Having a fun moment in raw deals like that. I was going to ask you about that. But,
I have so many stories like that. I've had great moments in raw deal. That's what keeps me around is remembering all the fun times I've had.
Let's go down here with
yeah, go for it.
Going forwards like that. How do you feel about the state of the game now, where it's at now, and going forward? I remember when you're still probably on the raw deal Illuminati group. I'm sure it's like that.
Oh yes.
And so I'm sure
I'm still on the inside.
Yeah. So
I remember Virtual 1 coming out and people saying it was the most balanced that raw deal has ever been, and I was very proud of that because we put a lot of work into V1. And then every set after that was, how do we build on this without breaking everything? And we've had some rough running. We've had some guys that have needed some tuning, needed some tweaking down. But a lot of what Creed and I talk about now isn't tweaking down, it's turning up and bringing guys from those early sets back up to a place where they can compete. So I think that Raw Deal is in good hands right now, especially with guys like Eric in there, guys like Scott and Dilbert in there in the rules side. I think that Raw Deal is going to go to very interesting and very exciting places, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it takes us.
There's what you think? There's some new tricks coming out.
I think we've got a few things in the works that'll definitely get people's attention.
And I'm not going to say anything because I'm part of that same group. So
right, you and I could just wink and nod at each other and be like, "Yeah, there's some stuff coming that'll be interesting."
But what do you think? What do you have to say to people then who are very, very anti-virtual because they say, well, you took my deck, my Piper deck, my Andre deck, my Eugene deck, and you made them worthless.
So I can't really say that didn't happen because, of course, Andre and Piper and Kennedy and Eugene, if we had just left those guys alone and been like, okay, go play, they would have just dominated the format. JBL is another one too, where especially in Virtual 1 where everything was unique. How do you make a guy like JBL balanced when he's drawing cards off of everything he does? So to those people, I have to say, as someone who has been in the game for 15 years and has played a ton of decks, part of the magic of Raw Deal, at least to me, is getting out there and finding what's new and what's old that can be brought up by something new. If you really love Piper, and Piper is the only reason that you're playing Raw Deal, I don't know what to tell you except that Piper is not healthy for the format that we're making. Piper wasn't really healthy for the game when he was released in the actual printed game.
You'd see the
and that
same
was
five
evident
decks
by
always playing.
how dominant he was in Great American Bash.
Oh, yeah.
Having a deck that just shuts down 2/3 of my opponent's deck, how do you balance that?
Yeah.
And they tried to just kind of walk forward like, okay, Piper's incredible, so we'll just never print a good card for him again. But he's incredible because of what he does with his ability. He doesn't need any other card support.
Yeah.
Kennedy is one of those guys where he's incredible because he shuts down a part of the game for the other player. It's not super fun to play against.
Yeah.
When I was at the Canadian qualifier that I got to top 4 to, I ended up losing to home team. And that was Suicide of Sephiroth. I don't actually remember his real name, but hell of a nice guy, super great Raw Deal.
Funny, we only know guys by their handles.
Yeah, but that's life in the virtual age, and life in the digital age. I could have played better that game, but he played his heart out, and he deserved that victory. He ended up losing to Kennedy in the finals, played by Andre Segura, who super nice guy, super funny guy. I miss Drake. He's great. But Kennedy worked because you could do whatever the hell you want in the pre-match phase, and your opponent couldn't do dick against you. You got to set up the game to make your own success, and your opponent just had to get by with what he was drawing. How do you balance that in an environment? Part of the reason that Kennedy existed was because Great American Bash was closing the book on Classic and setting things up so that Classic could be its thing and Revolution could come around and be its thing. You had talked about an hour ago, which is funny that we've been going for that long,
Wow.
that when you were designing Virtual Revolution 4, you talked about just caring about Revolution. All Access can go do whatever the fuck it wants.
Yeah, exactly.
When Revolution 1, 2, and 3 were being designed, that was Barron's exact mindset. The words he used was that All Access was self-sustaining and self-regulating. All Access would just work itself out. We need to make sure that Revolution works as a format in and of itself and can stand on its own 2 feet.
I truly believe that the licensing continued to keep going, that the smart marketing way to do that was to go ahead and every other release would complement each format.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely the way that it should have been done. But I also feel like, and this is definitely a question for Mike Foley, if you can ever get him on, I feel like by the time Revolution was coming out, the writing was kind of on the wall, and Revolution was their last punt to try and revitalize the game to get people interested in it again.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they did that was by lowering the barrier to entry, by being like, you could play a Revolution with just these sets. You want to get into Raw Deal? Cool. Here's our Revolution starter. Here's some Revolution boosters. Great. Go play a Revolution format game. You have everything you need. You don't need to worry about the past 5 years of the game.
Yep.
And that in and of itself is a great idea, because that gets people into Raw Deal and playing Raw Deal again. Where the wheels started to fall off the cart there was people be playing Revolution, having a good time. They'd be seeing people playing All Access and be like, how do I get into that? And the answer a lot of the time for those people was you don't. Because there's so much stuff in All Access. And even if you're just trying to get staples, you're spending oodles and oodles of dollars just to get in the door.
But oodles and oodles of dollars to get in the door is small in comparison to something like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or Magic.
Yeah, well, Magic has rotations that help bring that price down. I mean, yeah, if you want to play Vintage, you're going to be spending 5 figures. But even if you just want to play Standard, I have feelings about Magic and Standard because I feel like Standard is too expensive to get into. But part of the reason of that is that Magic is a very formulaic game to me. When you sit down to play Magic, you're like, all right, what deck am I going to play? I'm going to play Bant Ramp or Orzhov Companion, or I don't know. You could just throw out words that don't mean anything unless you're a Magic player. But the decks are kind of what they are. What made Raw Deal different and cool to me was its emphasis on superstar diversity. Every superstar is their own thing that works differently than the other superstars do. They all have their own hooks and their own niches. When I show up to a tournament, I'm not like, all right, there's the foreign object deck, and there's the 3 copies of the volley deck. No, it's foreign object Heyman, or volley Bookerman, or volley Kurt Angle. And there's, 400 superstars in the game now?
Yeah, something like that.
Something crazy like that? So
all with their own unique ability.
Exactly. And their own unique superstar-specific cards. And I can't take a Paul Heyman deck and just turn it into an Andre the Giant deck. That doesn't work.
Nope.
They don't even speak the same language.
Nope.
I remember trying to take my A-Train deck and develop it into a Teddy Long deck with the A-Train Enforcer. Because you'd still have the A-Train ability, but you don't have the A-Train cards. And working off Teddy's restrictions where he only has a 50-card deck and he has his own specifics, and they just did not speak the same language. That transition didn't work. It didn't capture the same essence. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes Raw Deal cool to me. That's what makes it worth coming back to.
That's a great description. That's a great description, yeah. So it's moving forward, do you think they're going to be addressing some broken stuff, some things that need still to be addressed from previous releases that need to be updated a little bit?
So, yeah, I think that moving forward, there's absolutely going to be the same care and attention paid to taking care of the things that don't quite work, whether it's don't quite work because they're too strong or don't quite work because they're too weak.
I mean, it is the beautiful thing about having virtuals that you can change things on the fly when need be, like that. Because
Yep.
that's the beautiful thing about it. I'm loving seeing. I don't visit TCL like I used to. I very
Yeah.
rarely go there.
I'm kind of in the same boat.
But when I go through there, I spend a good amount of time on there, kind of get myself caught up. Like today, before I got on with you, I wanted to make sure I jumped on and TCL, see if there's anything I'm missing. And before we got started here, I just got on there. I happened to notice, I go, wow, I kind of just went and read through all of Creed's cutting room floor. That's some great stuff right there.
There's some really neat things that didn't quite make it into sets.
Yeah.
We had some crazy ideas, especially in the beginning. And we tried a lot of them. Some of them didn't pan out. And some of them we made just for fun.
Yeah, that's why I started my Are You Serious stuff on
yeah. So just to pull back the veil a little bit, we were kicking around an idea, which never materialized, of making Are You Serious as a whole set of stuff that would not be tournament legal. So we could do all kinds of crazy and stupid things with it just for the fun of the game.
Yeah, that would be
We decided
fun.
It wasn't worth the development time to pursue, but I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to that well someday. Also, Are You Serious isn't around as a web series. It hasn't been around since, 2013?
Yeah, I mean, I have all those images, though. I have everything.
Yeah.
I've got
I
all
would
of it.
love to make a Puppet H superstar. That's all I'm saying.
That'd be awesome. That would be great.
You can pack non-maneuver Triple H cards.
Some of the designs and artwork that was really great, with that Miz popping out of and that Brock Lesnar punching. I mean, that 3-dimension was just so cool. It's like I really love that stuff.
That's all Creed. Creed is a rock star when it comes to putting those images together. We had another guy, one of my local guys. He went on TCO as Prong 19.
Oh yeah, Prong used to do. He did my original banners for me. That I ended up not using. And I ended up making my own. I started becoming a little Photoshop prolific myself. So I make all my own flyers.
He works at the local store that I used to play tournaments at. He was one of the guys that actually got me into Raw Deal. So he's a super nice guy.
Yeah, I have all those images he sent me too. He sent me a ton of. He did all of my product images. He did one for reversals for me. I was going to do the same kind of stuff that like the other websites that sell Raw Deal do, where they had just like boom reversals and just all reversal right there. And I said, I get that, but I kind of want things done by release.
I think it's easier to find things by release because if you look at reversals, holy shit, there's
a lot.
1,400 cards here. How do I find what I need?
Well, that's what the search field's for. It's like that, but
But at that point, why do you even have the flyout when you're just putting it in the search field?
Correct. That's when I put it all in, it's correct. It's correct release. So, but we all have our own little ways we want to do things. So.
Organization is a very personal thing. How I organize things makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you. That's fine because
I had arguments.
I can find what I need.
I had arguments with my partner before because he was so like, I'm like, listen, I worked in the music business. Yeah, I say work in the music business. I should say that back. I worked in the very smallest. The bottom of like a record store. That's at the bottom of the music business. So, but when you go through and you're having to organize, and I helped open the first Best Buy in Southern California, store 101 in Mission Viejo, California. Best Buy is a Minnesota company. So they went and started opening up. This is 94, 95. So we the way they organize things like that is like, this is how you're supposed to organize. If I go to Best Buy, I'm not going to go find the Beatles under T.
No, that's absurd.
But I had to argue people about like, no, it'd be under T for the Beatles. So I'm going to have the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stone. I had to everything under the. Are you kidding me? Doesn't make any sense. Like I fought with my partner about this. Yeah. Like the database when it was set up, because we use Crystal Commerce just like Category does, just like Carte Blanche. They use templates. We had a template, but we took our template a little bit further. We actually manipulated the database to actually really, because they didn't have Raw Deal in their database.
Right.
As its own thing. It was, I think, either a Carte Blanche or Category 1 were using like a comic book template to actually build their database. So they just ended on their own stuff. We went in and we added all fan favorites, cheaters, Raw, SmackDown, every attribute there is on a card you can possibly think of is entered in the database. We had to create that. We created it. That's why it took us about 6 months to get it to even before I was paying for a website that I couldn't even use because the database wasn't even ready. I was still using the eBay store.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how you have to kind of organize things and make things work and stuff like that. So we would argue about that where he was always listing things as under T. I go, no, I'm not going to put the game under the.
It's game, comma, the.
Exactly.
Get it right.
So he would go in and enter things. If you go to the Facebook page, I think he has it organized that way. If you go to the Facebook page, there's a ton of stuff under the for all the superstar specifics. Because on VelaCards Facebook page, we have every image of every superstar specific card.
Yes,
so
you do.
If I'm a player going, hey, what comes in a Hulk Hogan set? What everything from virtual everything. I can go to the Hulk Hogan folder and it's all there.
Yes, I've seen that.
So if you go under
impressive.
T, it's going to have the Immortal One, the Home Team, the Heat,
the Boogeyman.
Yeah, it's all there under T. And I'm too lazy to go through and just reorganize it all right now. I'm like, I'm just not going to argue about it right now. Just not going to do it. All right, man. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, I've had a blast.
I'd love to have you on again for a release talk.
I would love to be on.
And I'll promise you they'll be much shorter.
Hey, that's not me keeping you. I'm sorry, it's not you keeping me. It's me keeping you.
No. I'm the other way around, man. I'm usually the talker.
I think we've both been the talker, which is why this has gone for an hour and a half.
That's great. So
I
really appreciate you coming, taking some time and coming.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
No. Trust me, it's honors all mine, man. I'm just a seller guy. I just try to keep the game alive a little bit. You guys have worked all the magic behind the scenes to make things happen. You create things. You make it playable for people who want to play. You made it fun for my group when you guys developed Virtual 1 and 2. We were all over that because there are very few guys in my play group that were aware that TCO was making those. So I would come to an event and you guys would have like a Bret Hart set.
Yeah.
I would print it out. I'd print out 16 of them. I'd cut them all out. I'd glue stick. I actually was double-sided taping them to actual cards. Then I would glue stick them. And I got, fuck this. I start cutting them out and just sliding them a bunch of step asides, just start standing switches. And then and then I would give them away as part of this is a Bret Hart set. Where'd you get these from? Did you make these? No, just I'm keeping it on the down low. Then Gilbert found out about it, and then the guys would find out about it. So I'm like, okay, well the cat's out of the bag now. So, but it made guys like super excited about wanting to play. Like, oh shit, there's a Bret Hart set, man. This is awesome. This is so cool. An Ultimate Warrior set. Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, I've played a lot of games with Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, you guys made the magic happen tonight, which is great, and it's a lot of appreciation for that. Because hey, from a business standpoint, it actually has been very beneficial to me because not from a virtual standpoint and selling pro printed cards. It's a whole different beast in itself.
Yeah, that's a whole different story.
It still keeps people wanting to go and play the original comic images stuff, and you don't have any idea how many times I have sold something to someone, bought it back from them, sold it back to them, bought it back to them, sold it back to them again. I mean, I have customers like that who I need to get out of the game and they come back in the game. When we have a guy, his name is Alan, great guy. It was so funny because Creed was living in Oklahoma. Yeah. Alan was in SoCal, part of our group. Those guys literally moved states the exact same week. Totally unrelated. Like Alan moved to Oklahoma and Creed moved to California.
That's great.
And Alan used to be like, he used to buy from me all the time there in SoCal. Then he sold stuff to me. He sold a lot of stuff on I think his eBay handle was King of Kings, something.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so he sold a lot of stuff. And then now he's back to buying again.
Thought it was out, but they pulled me back in.
Going to get married, so he sold a bunch of stuff to help, pay for the wedding. They start buying it all back again.
That's life, man.
But they see that you guys create these characters like that like, holy shit, there's like whatever superstar like I want to play, you guys made it happen. And now it's like I want to play and build off all that. It's like, well, I need some old classic stuff to make this new guy good. Right. Shit, you know what? That reminds me, I want to play Triple H again. I want to buy some Triple H stuff again. So it helps from a business standpoint that it really keeps it going. My only fear in virtual was, and again, it's a whole different topic, but I'll just barely touch on it right now. which was making throwback versions of staple cards. And I get
So-
that. I get the reasoning behind it. I totally understand it. But in my mind, I'm going, holy shit, no one's going to want to buy Revolution of the Mind from me now because they got throwback versions. Like, well, guys who want the real stuff are going to want to buy the real stuff. And I can
And
tell
the
you
thing
after
about the
several years-
throwbacks,
Huh?
the thing about the throwbacks is that we always made them subtly worse.
Yes.
And that was very intentional because we did not want Raw Deal to become a game where you just go and print off everything. We wanted people who had that product to still feel like their product was worth having. And I think that's an important thing to really foster, is making sure that when people have their cards, they're not just throwing them in the trash because they're worthless.
Which has happened, and I picked those out of the trash before. I'm
Yeah.
not ashamed to admit that. Not ashamed to admit that at all. You throwing that stuff away? I literally had people who were fed up at an event that I had at Frankenstein, and it took their stuff, they threw it in the trash can. They were done.
I've heard of people lighting their decks on fire.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So something that I've learned about Raw Deal cards are plastic coated, which means if you burn them, you do not want to inhale that.
No, they. That's something you want to throw in the fireplace.
No.
Unless it's an
no.
emergency.
On a completely unrelated topic, did you know that if you put a foil card in the microwave for about 5 seconds, it sparks?
Does it?
Yes. Don't try this at home. You'll ruin your microwave.
Dare I ask why you would know this?
So because I was told that when I was playing a different card game called Yu Yu Hakusho, where there were a lot more foils.
Oh, hey, you want some of that? I have some.
I've got plenty. Don't worry about it.
I got like these promo packs that I got years ago.
Yeah, no, I've still got all my Hakusho. I've got tons. But I had a foil that I just didn't care about. So I was like, all right, I'll throw this in the microwave, see what happens. Put it in for about 10 seconds. After 5 seconds, I see this blast of light from my microwave.
Really?
Yeah, it sends up a pretty big spark. And then that foil spider webs.
Oh, that'd be kind of a cool video to watch, though, wouldn't it?
It would, but I would not want to do it to my own microwave.
Did it like damage your microwave? Like it?
Thankfully, no, but if I kept doing it, it would. Because having large electric discharges in an electric appliance is not a good idea, folks.
Safety tip. Who knows? See, this segment is also a good house.
You can mark this video educational now.
That's right. It's also very educational for things other than actual Raw Deal. Awesome. Cool, man. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm always happy to be here. Anytime you want me on, just hit me up.
I'll message you again, and we'll try and schedule when I start doing releases. Do you have any particular releases that you specifically like to talk about?
That I want to talk about? Oh, man.
Something that you probably have a plethora of knowledge about?
Armageddon would be a good one to talk about.
Armageddon.
I think that's a really interesting set, because that's a set that introduced volley, right?
I can find out for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was.
I think you're right. I think, and that's the only thing I introduced, I think.
Yes.
As far as,
Armageddon had to have introduced volley because Armageddon is upon us versus volley cards.
correct. It introduced throwback cards too.
Yes. That was a set that really changed the game. So I think that would be fun to talk about. I'm also very interested to seeing, not starring, but seeing the discussion on Divas Overload, because I want to see somebody just trash that for 20 minutes.
That's great. Divas Overload. Yeah. Nice. Someone had a nice idea, I'm sure, but on paper it looked nice. But
Ooh, that is certainly a format. That was definitely a set that happened.
Well, it was bound to, I guess, while all the chicks are becoming popular at the time, all the women wrestling was becoming very popular.
It wasn't that even that it was about the women, because that was fine. 1 second.
So, all right, man, I'll let you go.
All righty, man. Thanks for talking with me.
I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
Let's talk
Anytime.
again soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Have a good one.